Good afternoon. I'm Mohit, and I'll be joining Siddharth in taking you through the second leg of our summit. But first of all, let me thank our title sponsor, Yes Bank, and our strategic media partner, Your Story, for their support. Now, we will have a panel discussion, and for it, I'd like to hand over to Professor Srivardhini Jha. Professor Jha joined NSRCEL as a faculty member in December 2015. Prior to joining IIMB, she worked as a researcher with the McGill Center for Convergence of Health and Economics. She has an FPM, which is an equivalent of a PhD, in corporate strategy and policy from IIM Bangalore, MS in Management Science and Engineering from Stanford University, and BTech in Information Science and Engineering from Bangalore University. Prior to moving into academia, she has held several senior managerial positions at Microsoft, Sun Microsystems, and Infosys. Please welcome Professor Srivardhini Jha. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you for the introduction. Audible? So I would like to welcome our esteemed panelists here. On the far end is Mr. Shankar Maruwada. Apologize for the incorrect information there. He is an IIT Kharagpur grad, also an IIMA MBA, and he's been with P&G in the Entrepreneurial Venture Marketing Group. Is that right? Okay, so he started his own company, which is sold in 2007. And very interestingly, he's been working very closely with Nandan Nilekani on the Aadhaar project, and subsequently also was working with him on his political campaign. And he is an angel investor, actively investing in many companies. And he mentors startups. He works very closely with um, a think tank called iSpirit here, based in Bangalore. And his sessions are extremely popular and well attended. So welcome, Shankar, and thank you for being here today. And we have Mr. Harsha Lal, who is EVP and Head, Non-Telecom Business at Rural Shores Business Services Private Limited. He's an MBA from IIM Ahmedabad and BTech in Electrical Engineering from IIT Kanpur. He has more than 26 years of experience in the IT industry and has extensive knowledge of sales, marketing, and product management. He's worked with Dell, Wipro, and Sun Microsystems in his career. Thank you very much for being here, and welcome to this panel. Last but not the least, we have Mr. Ashutosh Kumar. He joined Jagriti in 2008 and in its founding year. He's been the executive director since 2012 and advises the executive team on strategy. He's an IIT Kharagpur alumnus, a theater enthusiast, and has made several short films. He has created and managed partnerships with corporates such as Google, Dell, Coca-Cola, and Rolls-Royce, and he's also been a regular TEDx speaker. Welcome, Ashutosh. And I forgot to mention that Shankar is the founder and CEO of EkStep, which is an NGO, and he works closely with Nandan. Okay, so welcome to you all to this very interesting panel discussion on sustainability and scaling up of social ventures. We all understand and acknowledge the importance of social ventures and how they are a very important mechanism to solve some of the most pressing problems that India faces today. But even as they go about tackling some of these issues, there's no reference point. The challenge here is there is no Silicon Valley to look up to and say, oh, let's try that here, right? We are really the trailblazers. So these guys are the trailblazers. They are inventing this as we go along. So not only is their work extremely relevant for how India moves ahead and for its development, but I think we are also informing the world on how to create social impact and how to actually address some of the most pressing social issues. So I think it's a very relevant and interesting topic. So without further ado, what I would like to do is I would request each one of you to just give an elevator pitch, a 2-minute pitch on what it is that your organization does, just for the benefit of the audience, the why, what, and how of your organizations. Shankar, we might start with you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm very honored to be here. So, EkStep is a non-profit that was founded around a year ago by Nandan Nilekani, Rohini Nilekani, and myself. Our mission is to reach 200 million children by 2020 and create a technology based infrastructure that will improve their learning outcomes in primary education, just reading, writing, and basic math. Uh, that's in Indian languages and also English, but mostly in Indian languages. And what we're doing is creating a technology platform which educators, schools, content creators, parents, anybody can use for either creating content around basic literacy and math, or using that content free of cost on uh, tablets or smartphones or any other electronic media. So that's basically the what and the how. And the other relevant point is most of the initial folks are from a Aadhaar background. We've got some of the old Aadhaar gang back, so we have some experience of going from, well, zero to now 960 million in 6-7 years. So we are using some of those strategies to figure out how to scale from zero to 200 million in 5 years. Well, by Aadhaar standards, the goal is smaller, but in the field that we are doing, education, it's extremely difficult. As those of you who have some experience of education know, it's an extremely complex social problem. And the reason why we have set these crazy goals in such a short time is, if we wait for a long time to come up with an education solution for children, by the time we come up with that, the children won't be children. So it's not a problem that we can take years and decades. It's a problem that needs to be solved now. And like anything in India on a social project, anything you touch is complex. It is a massive scale, and well, there are many other challenges in the social sector. But as uh, Professor Vardhani said, my background is hardcore business, and this is the first time I'm into something which is a social kind of thing. I'll share more about it, but I think I'll hand it over to Harsha.
So thank you, Shankar, and thank you to you, Professor. I think it's really a pleasure for me to be here. You know, coming to a step well classroom after a long time, and it's really nice to be here. Um, so, like you said, my name is Harsh Lal. I actually have been with Rural Shores now for 3 years. We are a 6-year-old organization. Um, the genesis of the organization has been really so we are, first of all, we are in the BPO sector. We do everything that a normal BPO would do, and we do it for all the normal companies that a BPO would do such work for. So we run back offices in finance and accounting. We run back offices in HR. We run call centers in local languages. We do a lot of work which normally any BPO would do, and we do it for all the similar clients. It's multinational clients, domestic clients, and so on. But the difference is that we do this out of centers that are located in rural areas. And when we say rural, it means tier 6 and tier 7 places, which is anywhere from a population of 10,000 to 40,000. So that's the difference, is that we don't set up centers in large towns or even smaller towns. We go to villages where the need for jobs and sustainable jobs is very high. The organization was set up by, the founder is a person by the name of Murali Vulaganti. If you go to the website, you'll see it, and I'm sure some of you may be aware of him. He was a person who worked in EDS many years ago in the US and in the Far East, and then came back to India, was heading the operations of one of the large BPOs here in India. And during that time, he realized that they were recruiting people by the hundreds and thousands, and there were not enough people in urban India to go by. And plus, people would just leave at the drop of 100 rupees increment, 200 rupees increment. So and then he realized that his HR people were actually getting all these people by the truckload from rural areas, and there was a huge migration going on from rural to urban. It was displacing the families that were there in rural areas. The people who were coming to urban areas were living in PG accommodations. They were unhappy because their life was turned upside down, and they just couldn't save enough money to send back home. So everyone was a loser in this. So he said, why are we getting people to jobs? Let us take jobs to people. So that was a simple concept on which this company was founded. We are a social venture, and like you rightly said, Professor, that the definition of social venture is always kind of ambiguous. And to the commercial world, we feel they think of us as an NGO. To the NGOs, they think of us as making droves of money in the commercial world, and we kind of are stuck somewhere in the middle. So that's one of the challenges as for us is. But we are a .com company, which means that we are for profit, because we do believe that you need to be for profit to sustain yourself, and not be with a hand, like they say, go with a handshake like this and actually do that. We don't want to do that. So that's really what we are. Our goal is to actually set up 500 micro centers like this. It's a very ambitious goal, one in each district of the country, large district of the country, and employ something like 100,000 people. And we believe by each person being employed gives sustenance to 5 people because of the family members. And so it's basically 500 million people being fully sustained through the initiative that we are. So that's a very ambitious goal. We are much smaller right now. We are 18 centers, 3,500 people today, but the sites are very high.
Yeah, so hi, I am Ashutosh, and just to give you the genesis of Jagriti Yatra is exactly 100 years ago in 1915, when Mahatma Gandhi came back from South Africa. He did a train journey to understand the country, to understand its problem, and like a true entrepreneur, he was doing idea validation for his Satyagrah movement. And when he found that this is going to work in this country, he immediately launched that movement, and that led to the freedom of the country in some way. So, taking a cue from that train journey, or taking inspiration from his train journey, we started with a similar train journey in 2008. And our goal, our objective was to inspire the young people, especially those who are from small towns and villages. So, very much like what Harsha was saying, the tier 2 and 3 districts of the country, we want to inspire them to become entrepreneurs so that they can start their own enterprises wherever they are, in whichever district they are, and in the process they can create a lot of local employment opportunities, so that all this migration and other problems stops. So that is where we started in 2008 with Jagriti Yatra as a vehicle to inspire the young people, to give them exposure to the basic skills of entrepreneurship, so that they can go back and start their own enterprises. Now we have moved to the another venture which we are calling Jagriti Enterprise Network, where we are trying to set up incubation programs in these districts, and we have started experimenting in eastern UP in a place called Devariya, where we are setting up an incubator to help local small and medium entrepreneurs, people like those who are running dairy farms, those who are running bakery manufacturing units. So these kind of young people we are trying to nurture. We are designing three specific services for them. Number one is enterprise training, basic entrepreneurship training and skilling. Second is access to market, which we found after a survey in that area is the biggest need of these enterprises. The third is the linkage to funding, where we ourselves are very weak and we need to figure out how we go. But these three services we are working upon. Our mission is to nurture 100,000 entrepreneurs by 2022, the 75th anniversary of India's independence. So that's where we are.
And I see that there is a nice linkage, right? You focus on children and educating them, and then you focus on providing employment, and then you take that a notch higher and say, how can we make entrepreneurs out of them? So that's great that we have this set of panelists here today. So my first question is, when we talk about social ventures, they are very purpose driven. Now, when you bring in the angle of sustainability, how does this sort of muddy the equation? Are sustainability and purpose, is there an inherent conflict between the two? And how do you sort of balance this? And from your own experience, if you can tell us how you have managed to balance this or not, that would be great.
Well, if I was to talk from the rural shores example, I think the like I said, we are a for-profit organization. I don't think we want to feel apologetic about being a for-profit organization, because I think profits help to sustain the organization. Now, we will not be a for-profit organization which will make 100% margins and so on. But little margin which will help us to sustain and grow is what we would certainly like to do, and that makes us sustainable in the longer run, because I think it's very important. At the end of the day, if you provide employment, you got to stick to the laws of the land. You got to make sure that you pay minimum wages. You've got to be able to, and we would like to provide benefits to our employees, for example, doing PF, or providing them health benefits or any other benefits that are there, which a normal corporate would do. There is no reason, just because these people don't know about that or not are not exposed to that, that they should not get those benefits. They may not get it to these, to the extent that someone else, that the insurance covers may not be like 8-10 lakhs. It could be a lakh or 50,000, but sufficient enough for them to start doing work for themselves. So we are not trying to promote a lifestyle, but at least make sure that livelihoods done in the right way are taken care of. So it's very important for us to be able to sustain ourselves, because we don't want the mission or the objective or whatever we want to achieve, our aspirational goal, being hampered for the lack of funds. And anything that you do in terms of expansion requires funding. So you set up a center, you got to put up, you got to pay the rentals, you got to set up the infrastructure there, you got to provide for links, because at the end of the day, all our customers are commercial organizations, and commercial organizations will do business with us because there is a value proposition that is there, and the value proposition is not a social value proposition. It is a value proposition which is a hardcore, rupees and paisa value proposition, and the social angle provides for a nice icing on the cake, because given the fact that there are two potential partners who are roughly similar in their commercials, they would rather do business with us because it also helps them do something good for society. But if we are way off in terms of our commercials, they're not going to do business with us. So it's very important for us to be able to provide that value proposition and be able to generate our own funds in that. So sustainability is part and parcel of our business model, just like doing social good is part and parcel of our business model. Because tomorrow there is and we have had, by the way, opportunities for us where people have told us, why don't you set up a larger center? And you can't set it up a larger center in a rural area, because there's simply not enough people available. Around the in the periphery of that area, you will have only maybe around 15-20 institutions, colleges, schools put together. So we can't really source that many people. So to source larger number of people, we have to move to a district headquarters, or we have to move to a little larger city. We don't want to do that, because that is an inherent conflict itself, because we want to go to the most needy and to be able to provide employment and solid business opportunities and a window into this ITES revolution, which is almost kind of bypassing the rural sector there. So that's really, for us, sustainability and scale go almost hand in hand, along with the social good, because it's just built into the model.
I'm relatively new to the social sector, but my experience thus far has been social sector should not be viewed with a different lens from regular business. The basic principles of business also apply here, which is you need to create value. That value has to be acknowledged by somebody, acknowledged either through an economic transaction or some social transaction. And once that value is created, then comes a question of sustainability. And if you see, most sustainability initiatives have some economic transaction or a social transaction. So looking at it from that lens, yes, maybe the objective is not to make money, right? The objective is not profits, but you cannot create sustainability without a value creation engine. It's like I've seen a lot of social sector startups who are doing a lot of great work, but it's the equivalent of pushing a car. As long as you're pushing the car will move. But if you want true sustainability, we need the engine of the car to be started, and that engine creates its own momentum. But a lot of social sector efforts are in the push mode. I need funds. As long as I have funds, I will push the car will move. right? And there's the illusion that the car is moving. I mean, it is moving, but the moment you take the hand off, the car will stop. So I think that's to me, that's most important point about sustainability. Uh, it might look mercenary, but the act of creating value which somebody has to acknowledge through a transaction, right? If it is no economics in it, it's government is doing it, but somebody, there is money going into this, right? That money has to pay out either economically or socially, and to me that is the first step to sustainability, thinking pure value.
Okay, that's an interesting point that you bring about value creation and how, and if I might just sort of add to the question, now in your business, like you said, your paying customers are actually the larger corporations, right? So they're commercial enterprises. So in some sense, the base of the pyramid population are your producers in this model. But in your model, they are the consumers, right? So they are not paying for the services or the products that you give to them. So that is why the value creation becomes so important, because there has to be a value realization, which could then, I guess, the sustainability could come from another aspect. It might not be through direct payment from the eventual user, but by other means. Is that
Yeah,
a
actually, let me
reasonable
explain this in the context of EkStep. As I said, we are a platform where somebody can create content and somebody else can use it. But sustainability in our case happens when it is one of the great ways we think it can happen is, for example, the entrepreneurs, the 100,000 entrepreneurs that Ashutosh was talking about, if they can use their phones and the content on the phone to teach children basic education, basic literacy and math. So there, if you look at the value creation, in rural areas, they don't really have access to a lot of content, right? In many first generation learning households, possibly the only printed material they have in the house is the school textbook. They do not have access to great teachers. Government school teacher absenteeism is 29%. So on any, out of 10 days, on an average 3 days a teacher does not come, and our education system is such that it's all about completing the syllabus. So, and the whole lot of complications there. But if a small entrepreneur, and we're even looking at, can an educated housewife turn into a mini entrepreneur, helping 7 8 children in her neighborhood in a safe environment, charging 100 rupees or whatever, but she has to be delivering a service for which she gets paid either economically or socially, reputation, kind of thing. And there are many such things. We, low cost private schools, teachers are not well trained. The pay is very low, 5 to 10,000 rupees, and they cannot, the school management cannot afford to train them. So can they use this to improve teacher training? So we're looking at who are all the players, how can they possibly extract value from the infrastructure we are creating, and how do we create systems to enable that to happen. But the core is the value creation.
excellent point?
Yeah, no, I think the point is very valid about creating value, and giving you an example from Jagriti Yatra. See, our uh, fundraising model or the revenue model is such that on the one hand side we have these participants, 500 of them coming on the train journey every year, who get a lot of value out of this whole journey. They learn about entrepreneurship, they get a amazing network of people which they can tap into when they go back. But when we started this whole journey, we realized that uh, since we have a focus on the tier 2 and 3 districts, and most of them will not be able to pay the entire cost of the yatra, which comes to around 60,000 or so. So then we realize that we'll have to create value for other set of customers also. It can't be only these participants as a customer who can pay for our entire expenses. And then we started hunting who could be our other customer. So it was natural that we went to some of these companies like Google, Dell, etc., whose mission is also to promote entrepreneurship, and there's also some business returns for them. For instance, Google sees a great platform for pushing their mobile apps, their Android app, right? So for them, we are creating this value. We are giving them a very captive audience of 500 young people who are influencers in their own areas, so they can go back and spread the word about these companies. So that's what we did. We went to these companies and we sold this whole idea of the Yatra and how it can create value for you. And most of these companies are also trying to penetrate deep into small towns and villages now. So they saw this as a great vehicle. So for us, both our customers, the primary customers still are these participants who are coming on the train, because that is how we design the whole Yatra. But the secondary customers are also these companies, our sponsors, partners, for whom we are trying to create value. So value creation is essential. I think that should be the main focus.
Okay, that's an excellent point. Now, if we were to talk a little bit about scaling up, we talked a little bit about sustainability. Now, what are the challenges? Each of you, if you could just weigh in on what are the key challenges in India in scaling up social ventures. Yeah, please go ahead. Whoever is taking.
Well, I mean, challenges are plenty. I think it's how you address those challenges which kind of makes it all worthwhile. I think from a rural shores perspective, as I was saying, setting up each center is a pretty capital intensive activity. So you need to have ways by which you can raise that money to be able to set up those centers. And so it's one is the capital that you put in, but the more important investment that we make, and this we make by choice, is to train the rural youth. There are lots of colleges and schools all across India. You just drive from Bangalore or from whichever city you are from and drive about 50, 60, 100 kilometers away. You will find an engineering college, especially in the south. You'll find an engineering college, you'll find a medical college, you'll find some schools or something or the other. The quality of people that come out from there, though, unfortunately, most of the times are not really employable. They don't have the skills, the finishing skills that are required for entry into the corporate world. So one of the big things that we do at Rural Shores is to actually train people from the stage they come out of the high school. So we take minimum 10+2 education. So we take those people and then train them up to a level where they can go to an office. So simple things like office etiquette, simple things like email writing, how to behave in an environment. And rural India is quite different sometimes, because there is a festival, so I didn't show up to office. Well, I mean, there is an office. You got to ask your manager. You got to take a leave and then go, because if you're not coming to offices, is impacting someone else whose work we have outsourced here. So those kinds of things. So there is a lot of work that we do and investment in training. So that is the softer aspect of investment that we do. But investment and money to be able to scale up the centers is very important, because from the time you start a new center to the time you make some money out of the center, it could be between 12 and 18 months. So it's really important for us to be able to live within our own blanket and to be able to raise. So I would say finance is one big part. I think the government is doing a lot, and I think you probably would talk a little bit or you would be talking a little bit about policy. So I'll preempt that thing here. Government is doing a lot. I mean, you've got our ministers, union ministers, making a lot of statements and coming out with a rural BPO policy, for example. Those are really good intentions. So the intentions are really good, but intentions to execution, there is a fair amount of gap still there. So you'll have we want to do business, we would prefer rural BPOs, but your net worth should be more than 50 crores. You should have made profits in the last 5 years. So those are terms and conditions of the RFP. Well, you don't qualify, right there, cross and gone. So it's very difficult. And then also, let's say you manage to get a contract, then the payment terms are so onerous. We are all small companies, right? At the end of the day, they're not very large. In BPO standards, 3,500 people organization is a small organization. So cash flows are really important. So those kinds of things, and they'll say, okay, we're going to pay you after 90 days. And that also, you may be lucky if you actually get it in 90 days, you'll probably get it more like 180 days. So you can't sustain. The cash flows become really much. So those are the kind of challenges, mostly financial challenges we face. I think the other thing that we face, and that's kind of a little bit sometimes social challenges, because in our set up in rural areas, there is a lot of preset ideas sometimes. So, for example, we have to work at night. Now, night working is not necessarily considered very not considered okay by the parents of people, especially girls. So we have to be very careful with that. And then the way you come across to an employee, to provide feedback to them, or to be able to uh, give them some coaching, has to be done very differently in a rural area. So those are kind of challenges that we face. I don't know whether I had answered your question.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Harsh talked about the financial challenges and the social challenges. Uh, Let me tell you about a challenge which you will not think of as a challenge, but since you're all interested in this space, I think it's important you look at that. To me, and I'm making the statement deliberately to provoke, the biggest barrier is mindset to scale. And I'll also give you 2 tips on how to overcome it. But let me give an example. When we started Aadhaar, as any other government project, right? So the first barrier, as when I talk of mindset, we said we will reach 600 billion in 5 years, and it was a public commitment made to the Prime Minister and through him to the rest of the nation on August 12th, 2009, right? So by setting yourself a large goal means you are signaling intention that I want to do this at scale, as opposed to saying that, look, let me do a few pilots, and based on that I'm not sure whether I will scale up or not, I'll set my goal later. Or it's social sector, it's about impact, so let me focus on 10 villages and do this deep. Nothing wrong with that, right? And it's absolutely the right thing to do in certain contexts. But since the topic is on scale, to me a big barrier is mindset. So just setting a goal like that, we had three in Aadhaar, we had 3 potential goals: 400, 600, 800. It just came down to 400. We think it's too easy. 800 too difficult. 600. And I can tell you, if you had not set that goal, we would not have hit 600, which we hit not in 5 years but 4.5 years, which actually makes it the fastest startup to half a billion, ahead of Facebook. So it's something we can be proud of as a nation, that the fastest startup to reach half a billion customers is not Silicon Valley technology, it's an Indian government initiative. So and other thing is, so now the 2 tips. One is leverage existing networks, existing infrastructure, existing ecosystems. It's very important to understand. There is this temptation in the social sector that could be that I'm out to change the world, right? And therefore my solution will change the whole world. Nothing will change, right? If we can understand what are the existing systems, what are the lacunae in those systems, and therefore what will my intervention do to create value, going back to the earlier point, what will my intervention do which others will adopt it and take it, which is also another way to sustainability, because an existing ecosystem, an existing set of processes are adopting your solution. So leveraging existing networks. So to give an example, when we set up Aadhaar, the Aadhaar team, in spite of whatever it has achieved in the last few years, the core people, while why core, including peons and all across all the 6-7 regional offices, strength was not more than 200, and the core team was less than 50. And for the first year, the core team was 15, right? So the original proposal before Nandan took the job was to create a 2000 member bureaucracy to parallel election commission, because that's how government thinks, right? The first thing you do is you want more things. So to leverage, what we realized was there's an existing system, there's a massive existing infrastructure, government everywhere. There is a massive vendor network of people who go and create ID cards, etc. Private sector, right? Then there are technology vendors who have solved this problem in the US. So looking at existing networks, who has done what, taking advantage of it and creating something to pass it on to an existing network is a very important way of achieving scale. A second is technology. Again, in my limited experience, somehow social and technology don't go together in India. Okay, it's just experiential, right? It's not a value statement, but somehow there's a thing that technology is bad, right? Computers, they are bad and all that, but it is the surest way of scaling. If you want to go beyond a point, you have processes, and then I'm sure rural shows has a lot of processes. That is a very important step. The Once you have your basic processes, technology is a great way to scale up. And again, if you look at existing infrastructure, for us at EkStep, there are already above 200 million smartphones, and that number is rapidly going to rise. There is no connectivity yet, but there's an ecosystem, an almost informal ecosystem where media is passed in cases where there's no connectivity through SD cards and USB sticks. So a lot of people have smartphones, no connectivity, they take their SD card, and there's a thriving underground market for it. $10, two Hindi movies. Okay, and even recommends which movies to take. $20, a full serial, right? And what is happening in villages is you don't have TV or you don't have power, so they have a cell phone which has power. You can charge it when you get power. There is a magnifying glass, if you've seen that, it's around this much. Okay, sells for 50, $100. So what they do is, on the phone you play the movie, you put the magnifying glass in front, and 8 9 people are watching it. Okay, and again, the other point about sustainability is, the mindset is an assumption that people cannot pay, or an assumption that people do not need this, right? When the whole cell phone, do we need cell phones back in mid 90s or not? We need more landlines and not cell phones. We need toilets and not cell phones. Who are we to decide for people? Of course, policy etc has to be decided, but that's the thing about, uh, again, going back to the point about creating value that somebody pays for, either economically or socially or through a vote, which is a very important unit of value. So leveraging existing networks, taking help of technology, and another thing which again, a lot of people will not tell you, is being very choiceful in what you not do, because the less you do, the less resources you need, right? And therefore figuring out what do I choose not to do. In the case of Aadhaar, it was very clear, we'll only do two things. We will give a 12-digit number, and when electronically somebody says, is this person 1234, answer would be yes or no. That is it. That is all Aadhaar does. All the complicated technology and all is just this. It's just that it can be done electronically, right? And so it has a lot of uses. Like one of the uses is for pension. You have to prove that you're alive once a year. Once a year. So you have to go to the closest uh, office, government office, spend whatever time to go there. If you're 75, 80, whatever, spend the whole day, wait in line, and prove to a government official that you are alive. Otherwise, your pension stops. Now, the process of being alive, just imagine if I go to a kirana wala, I authenticate myself, a small electronic packet goes out, says that Shankar Maruwada authenticated, which means he was alive, right? Assuming it's not my finger chopped. He was authenticated, he was alive at 3:22 on this date. That electronic packet, like an email, goes to the government department, where, and that triggers off a transaction which sends a message to the bank, which transacts sends a money to this lady's account because her Aadhaar is linked to the bank, and she gets an SMS on her phone. All of this can happen within 3 minutes of her giving her ID proof at a kirana thing. So the thing is, we could have chosen to do all of this, right? But we said no, let's do only this because others will build on top, right? So simplicity is again very important. I think a rather long response, but
No, that's very helpful. I think what you're saying is really how can you plug into the ecosystem in a way that partnerships naturally form, and they sort of put your service or product on a growth trajectory, as
absolutely.
opposed to doing it all yourself. I think very valid point. Would you like to
So
add?
quickly, one of the challenges that I want to mention, apart from what my co-panelists have mentioned, is attracting and retaining good talent. And that is really one of the challenges we have been facing with our recently launched incubation program for Devariya in the eastern part of UP. And one of our core philosophies at Jagriti has been, if you are able to rally good people, good committed people around your vision, half of your job is done. So we focus a lot on team. Where is the team? How is the team? Who are the people who can join us? Who have the passion? Who have the commitment? And we do a lot of rigorous process before inducting anyone. And one of a very insightful observation made by one of the role models that we visit during the train journey in Hyderabad is Nandi Foundation CEO Manoj Kumar. He said very insightfully, one of the biggest challenges this country has faced is that the top-notch talent of this country, people from IIT, IIMs, and other MBA schools, they have gone into selling cigarettes and soft drinks, and you will find those products in each and every village of this country. The middle layer has gone to do some normal jobs. Those who were remaining, those who are at the bottom, and this may not hold true for our current times, those who are at the bottom, they went for the social enterprises or NGOs, right? That jhola chhap NGOs jo hote the. We need to reverse this pyramid. The best talent need to now go and try to bring safe drinking water in those villages, right? So that is the kind of talent I am talking about. How we can really incentivize the people with right skills, with right mind, with commitment, with passion to these rural areas of the country. And one of the things we are trying, and which is not new, which many fellowships have been trying, is we are trying to set up a system called Udyam Core, which essentially means on ground army of enterprise facilitators. So we are bringing young people in the age group 20 to 30 whom we can train, who can become business coach, who can stay in places like Devariya uh, for at least 2 years of their lives, commit and understand the challenges of these local small and medium entrepreneurs, and then connect them with the help of technology or through other means into the this big network, in this big ecosystem which can provide them the right kind of services. So this is just an experimental thing that we are doing, setting up these Udyam Core, and we are finding facing a lot of challenges in bringing the right kind of people to these places who can commit 2 years of their life. So I think talent is another challenge I would like to bring out.
Okay.
Can I say one more thing? Sorry to. So I think from a challenge perspective, the fact that you can actually deliver quality that is better, equal to or better than what you would get from any urban BPO. So it's I'm talking only in the context of BPO here. But what you can get from what we can provide from rural areas, is it equal to or better than that challenge that people don't believe us at first sight. So it's always a challenge marketing ourselves or selling ourselves to people, because can this all be done in rural areas? Well, I don't know. It's a lot of cows and buffaloes and areas. So whether you can deliver good quality service, whether safety and security is the same as that it would be in an urban area, whether my data would be secure, but whether so there are lots of other challenges that go hand in hand with this entire thing. So those challenges very much come in, and I just want to add on to his thing of getting the right talent. Right talent is absolutely critical, because a good person or the right talent can make a lot of difference in either whether you talk of sales or marketing, or you talk of delivery, or you talk of transitions. In our case, it's really important, and I think I'm also very heartened by the fact that people, and smaller companies can't pay as much. It is not you take up a job in, let's say, a PNG like he was there, or whichever other companies that others may have been. There is a certain amount of money you get there, and a social enterprise will never be able to pay that kind of money, because then there would be really no difference in terms of the value that you would get. So there is a gap which you fill in based on the on the the need of the individual or need of people to be able to do some good. So it's in the self-actualization bit a little bit. So you do that, but there is a very important thing to get good talent and to be able to build on that talent and nurture the talent, because that will ultimately be able to get newer people trained up as well. So part of the things what we do in our organization is to promote a lot of people internally, because they've seen the benefits of what comes from rural empowerment, and that's how they kind of build it through.
When we talk about scale and sustainability, I mean, the two are in many ways interrelated, right? When you have substantial scale, purely by economics of scale, you can probably become sustainable. You can find ways of being sustainable. But and if you are sustainable to begin with, then it's easier to scale because you can make a very valid business case. So how do you come out of this vicious loop? What goes first? How do you break it? In your experience, what is it that you do?
I think it's a great point, and I want to add a third S to it: sustainability, scale, speed. Right? Especially in social sector in India, the country needs solutions now, not after 10, 20, 30 years. It- So, so coming back to breaking the loop, as I said in my earlier answer, the starting point is a clear vision, right? Is it, and then, so as some great sculptor said, when you look at a piece of rock, right, I visualize what is inside and then chip away the non-essential to create the statue, right? It's not ground up. It's like, what do I have to remove? So starting with a clear vision of what I need to do, and therefore, what is that value that I'm adding? Who's going to pay for it, or who's going to appreciate it and pay for it? And I mean pay, I mean economically, socially, or whatever way, and testing that out. And the other mindset is, good mindset should be, I have to deliver awesome quality, right? I should not be thinking that at EkStep, I'm doing a child a favor, so a disadvantaged child can do with less quality content or less quality experience, right? uh, I would like to create something which I want to use with my children, right? And people recognize and appreciate quality. So the starting point is creating an awesome experience for whoever is using your product or service or technology, and but doing it in a way that allows you to scale up, right? So start with thinking scale, executing sustainability, because then you know that if it can work at 10, it can then work at 100, and then it can scale up. So to break out of the loop, first sustainability, then scale.
No, I think, frankly, I'm not the best person to answer this because we are still in experimental stage for this incubation program. So we'll see how it progresses beyond this pilot, and then maybe I can comment.
Yeah, so from our perspective in rural shores, I think it's very, very important to get it right, because if we are going to create 500 centers, and you have a design flaw in one of them which you are doing, and you're going to multiply it by 500, you'll have 500 times the same problem. So you don't want to do something and multiply the problems multiple fold. So you need to get it right. So you have to do it right. uh, so first of all, you need to get your strategy. So you have to build a strategy. Now strategy is a strategy. It may be right, maybe not right. When you come down to execution, there could be challenges which you may not have foreseen. There could be risk factors which become larger than what you had imagined them to be. So you have to create a strategy. Once you create a strategy, then you kind of put it down into a microcosm and create uh, you know one unit of what you would like to build over a period of time. So in our case, create one center and see whether the center, the way you have envisaged it, and is profitable, not profitable. Is it delivering the social impact that you are looking for? Is it not delivering social impact? What could be improved in that center? So obviously, you need to go through that thing, because ours is like I said, a social enterprise. So we have two objectives. One is a commercial objective, and the other is a social objective. And both these objectives are important. So if we are successful commercially, but don't generate the employment and don't uplift people in the rural sector, we would not consider ourselves successful. So we need to have a combination of both. So we got to measure that and then move it to the next stage. So that's exactly what we have done, is taken a center, created a pilot around that. Yes, it is successful. Then we try and replicate it out, and then of course now at this stage we are in the situation where we want to create a hub and spoke model, so that you have centers in a particular region becoming the spokes of a central hub. So you can have economies of scale, like you rightly said. So we don't need to have one HR manager for every center. We can have one HR manager for and a little better qualified HR manager for maybe 5 centers, but partly responsible for each of these centers, and have maybe little lesser qualified people in each of the centers. So we have to again now prove to ourselves that this hub and spoke model will be a successful model, and then go on to replicate this in many other places. So I think it's really important to get it right in the microcosm and then try and move it upwards, because if we are not able to create social impact, or we are not able to be profitable, I think either of these two things makes it not a good thing. And you got to learn from your mistakes, what you've done. And we've had plenty of mistakes, so we continue to learn from them every single day.
If I may add a point, I was talking about Aadhaar 600 million goal in 5 years. The real reason we set a goal like that was sustainability. So scale was an insurance, so that in 5 years, if the government changed, the new government should not be able to pull this down, and you cannot pull something that's at a massive scale. So quite interestingly, for us, scale was a means to sustain, and that's why we raced against time. And we knew that once we crossed 200 million, any politician will have second thoughts about pulling it down. And if we reach 600 million, how much ever the opposition wants to take it down because it's the previous governments, right, they will think twice. And it's in a way that gamble paid off. So there are interesting ways, but you need a clarity of what will sustain it, what will scale it up.
Excellent point. So let me open it up for questions from the audience.
All of you are doing a lot of initiatives in the rural, and trying to uplift the people who are not at all trained, and the mindset is very different. As you said, man, rightly mentioned that he's at a festival and he gone from the office, and you're struggling. So how much do you think, because mindset of even the urban is not completely stabilized or mature enough, so how much you are going to do about changing the mindset?
Well, if in our context, I think we really underestimate rural youth. I'm saying we means I'm included in that category. What we have realized in these 5-6 years that we've been in operation is that there is so much capability and so much potential in that rural youth, and plus the right attitude. In fact, sometimes attitudes in urban areas are not really that conducive to solid productivity. But in rural areas, those people are keen to make a difference. They take this job as a way to change their lives. They are, I often compare it to first generation immigrants. I mean, I don't know how many of you are immigrants to a larger city, or let's say some people who move from one country to another country and are first generation immigrants. First generation immigrants are always very, very, very hardworking. Their children may not be as hardworking because they get things on a platter, but the first generation immigrants are very hardworking. So these guys in rural areas are of that mindset because they see an opportunity. So of course you have to open their eyes to the opportunity, but once they see the opportunity, they will work their backsides off to be able to get to that thing. So our challenge and our also satisfaction is in helping them open their eyes. Of course, we need to train them. I think typically in a rural area, it takes roughly twice the amount to train as it would take in an urban area. So if some skill is to be taught and it takes 1 month in an urban area, for us it would easily take 2 months, which means we got to invest that additional month, which sometimes our clients don't like. But we gave you that order, why don't you get this started tomorrow? Well, told you, hang on for a bit. And also we make mistakes along the way, because when these people are, because typically their confidence levels are a little bit lower. they're not exposed to all the stuff that all of us in the urban areas are exposed to. So it takes some time for them to build up, but when they build up, they get to a level, the quality and the efficiency and productivity you can get out of them, you will not get out of anyone in urban India. Many of our clients have come and told us this. It was really struggle to get you off the ground, but having got there, you guys produce far better than some of our existing centers in Noida or Gurgaon or wherever in Bombay. So that's a solid boost for us. Just that, oh yeah, we are on the right track, we are doing the right thing, and these people are doing really well. The one more point I want to mention, and maybe a little bit out of context here, but I think it's important. So one is the quality of youth is pretty good, and then the gender diversity in rural areas for us is really good. We have 45% girls, and the reason why we have 45% girls, in fact it would have been 75%, but we don't allow them in the night shift, is in a India is a conservative society, and rural India is even more conservative. So when it comes to a family in a rural area not being able to make enough money to sustain themselves there, and then it comes to a situation when they have to ask one of their family members that you go to the city to make a living, they are willing to let their boys go, but they're not willing to let their girls go. So as a result of which, the girl talent available in rural India is outstanding, and they just need a medium to express themselves, and this provides them a medium. So this is just the youth, but there are other situations, and we have some of those employees as well, where a lady is perhaps the man has left her and she's got a child. So rather than being dependent on a relative for sustenance, she's taken up a job, and she can hold her head really high and feel very good about it. In fact, we have a number of people visiting rural shore centers. In fact, the Oxford EMBA program actually always makes a visit to rural shore centers every year. They're going to come here again in April. Your IIMB themselves, you guys have got a case study written on rural shores. It's part of your case analysis somewhere. So they come, and we of course get our associates to talk at that time. I was personally very moved by one of the ladies who got up, girls who got up and said, I got married, and my position in the household was, people would always, she's there, okay, her job is to make food, and her job is to provide sustenance and raise kids and so on. When she got a job and she started contributing to the family income, and not in an insignificant way, and sustainable. It's not like agricultural income, which is seasonal in nature. So her status in the family really went up. So it also helps uplift status of women. I just thought I'd mention that. It's really not relevant to the question you asked, but it was an important thing, and we feel happy that we are able to make that change, because we are not just changing and giving economic sustenance, but also helping change a little bit of social fabric in a little small way, in a microcosm.
Two additional points. One is, be careful of the assumptions you're making about mindsets, and validate it. Otherwise, it's an assumption unless validated. The second is, it's difficult to change mindsets. So therefore, ask the question of what mindset do they have that I can take advantage of. Two examples. In Aadhaar, there's no demand for an identity card as much as demand for access to resources, food, LPG, kerosene and all. So we realized that people knew that identity gives them that. That's why we even called it Aadhaar. It's a base to get things. So in EkStep, there's no real demand for learning my native language, in a sense, but there's a demand for English, right? Can we use that to get them onto the platform, right? And maybe somebody uses it to teach somebody else English, make some $100, but once they come onto the platform, they realize that, hey, I can also learn other things. So you have to work with the mindset that are prevailing, and so that over time, maybe you might want to change their mindset they will change their own mindset. But starting by saying I need to change their mindset you're setting up for a very difficult challenge.
Good afternoon. My question is for Shankar, and it's about EkStep. I have two questions. First is that you talked about technology. So you have created a lot of videos in different languages. How are these being executed on the field? Because in a classroom setting, you will need, for example, a projector or some medium to show the videos. And the second question is about teacher training. How do you if the content is so good, and I assume that you're not planning to replace the teachers with this content, how do you train the teachers to be as good as the content? How's the quality coming in?
So first thing is, it's not just about videos. There could be math worksheets, digital, a learning game. Like imagine if somebody were to use Angry Birds to teach the laws of motion, physics, etc. Then read along stories, right? So the various kinds of content. The second is, we will not do teacher training. We're just a bunch of 25, 30, 35 people. That's it. And what we will be doing is, for example, every teacher knows how to use WhatsApp. Nobody taught them that, right? They figured it out. As there was no teacher training program for WhatsApp. There was no teacher training program for Facebook. So if you make the product so simple that anybody who can use a smartphone, and even then, because of our relatively low functional literacy levels, our goal is, can a non-literate mother using our content and a smartphone help in the child's learning? What can the non-literate mother not do? Read. But if the app could read out, right, then the mother knows rest of what to do. So we're looking at all those things wherein at the bottom of the pyramid there are a lot of constraints, but there are a lot of aspirations also.